In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Atypical, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. The person at your side is your friend, not your enemy. Respect others and you'll find the world open up in unexpected ways. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcasts. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're diving into the role of curiosity in business and travel, bridging cultural gaps through travel, and building legacy through storytelling. Our guest today is Malcolm Teasdale. He's a British-American entrepreneur, author, and world traveler who sold his tech company after expanding it to 80 countries. Having visited 118 countries, Malcolm now dedicated his life to inspiring others through his book, public speaking, and podcasts, including The Travel Addict and To Brits in America. His journey is a testament to the transformative power of curiosity, respect, and storytelling. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support will help more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Malcolm Teasdale, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And you, Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. It's great to meet you. Been able to read about some of your unfiltered stories and books, and you seem to me like quite an adventurous guy. So I'm looking forward to diving deeper into it and talking about one of these books to kick us off. My favorite was definitely Travel Diaries of an Atypical Businessman. Tell us a little bit more about how that book came to fruition.
Basically, it was because I did a lot of business travel before I started my own company. The company I was employed, they moved me across from Britain over to the United States. I knew I'd be traveling quite a bit because I just introduced a new product to the marketplace. So I knew I'd be traveling quite a bit. So that, and then when I started my own company back in the 1990s, I still used to travel quite a bit in the US to start with, but more international stuff. And The Travel Diaries was a book I thought, for selfish reasons, it was a book, and actually my mother said this to me. She said, Malcolm, you ought to write a book. And I said, why, Mum? Because then you can read it later on in life and remember it. And I thought there's some truth behind that. I thought, yeah, if I write that book about some of the travel escapades, and when I'm lying in my deathbed, they're getting ready to pull the plug, I can read it and think, who the hell is that guy? No, seriously, I can look back and reflect. But yeah, so it's various stories about my business travel escapades. It goes in a geographical order, basically from North America, South America, then over to Europe, Asia. But I spent time in all continents trying to generate business. And it's full of escapades, mistakes, lessons learned, and all this stuff. You know, I was just pretty honest with it. And there's a couple of things I did for the government in there as well when I went on to some assignments for the U.S. government during troubled times. So it's a mixed bag of stuff. So I'm glad I wrote that stuff down because every few years I'd read a chapter and think, geez, I know I remember that. Yeah, so it's all good.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, your mother sounds quite lovely and clever. Remind me of the quote by Solomon, which is, every man ought to do three things: write a book, have a son, and plant a tree. This concept of legacy, is it a recurring concept for you? This desire of leaving a lasting impression?
Yeah, exactly. And when I started with that, I thought I'd do it again, and then I did the second book, which is all about when I decided to go and live in Asia for 2 years to generate business over there. which is doing it remotely is difficult because you really got to be in front of these people and understand the way they work, business ethics and their cultural ethics. And that's what I did. I went to live over there for a period of time, and that was a good thing to do. And I'd recommend that to anyone. That, if they got a business, spread internationally if you can. Yeah. So
Sure. No, and I read obviously your business was a technology business in the late '90s. But tell me more about it. What was it about, and what was the value proposition?
the business,
Yes, please.
yeah, we were a software development company basically, and it was in the class of industry. It was within telecommunications.
Hmm.
That's what I was brought up with. Even when I had my first job in Britain to work for the British Telecom, and over the years it was kept in telecommunications, although it became more high tech. So we developed software for companies that used the term, you probably heard them, call centers or contact centers,
Hmm.
and it was used to control all that environments. And basically, any company anywhere could justify having something like this to control their telecommunications or contacts with their customers outside world. So, and our software just managed all that environment, basically, in a nutshell. And so we sat down to develop that, and we brought on the expertise, and we were basically a software development company. But I'm an engineer by trade, but I became Mr. Salesman because someone had to do it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I did. It didn't bother me, but that was it. And we grew to quite a size. Actually, we had quite a large workforce in the end of the day, and so we just came to a point where we were with the group that with the amount of intellectual property. I guess we just were a target for acquisition down the road.
Yeah, got up to 150 employees, 4 countries, right? Headquarter wise, that correct?
Yeah, well, so we had representatives working for us that were in 4 nations,
Okay,
and
great.
that included me and say, but we had dealers, partners, business partners in different parts of the world who would sell our products. We landed up translating our software into about 7 or 8 different languages. Yeah,
Wow,
and
interesting.
yeah,
Interesting.
it's funny. I've mentioned this, Sam, but we had 2 versions of English. Now you probably think, well, that's weird. Yeah, because there was an English and an American English version, and just like there is of Spanish, 2 versions of Spanish: Spanish for Spain and Spanish for Latin America, right?
Yeah.
And so we had to. It's a spelling, but when you put people on the computer, they're looking at the user interface. It's sort of important. So anyway, that's it.
Sure. Let me brought you to a younger self. When you're thinking about your building this obviously global business, or at least that was your intention, obviously when you started out. What tell me more about some of the lesson from entrepreneurship and the hardship that you had to overcome, and just the formation of that business to start with.
Well, it's not going to be easy, of course, but we we decided to do it, myself and my partner, and it wasn't without problems because all companies have issues. Some deals you win, some deals you lose. We can take mistakes ourselves. We all make mistakes, but we learn from our mistakes. We've got to do that. And some of the people we employed generally were great, but sometimes it doesn't work out. But what we did, we made a point, especially our human resources department. We're based in Canada, actually. Our headquarters were in Ottawa, by the way.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, I used to live in Ottawa, but it's way back when. But we took time to build morale in the company. So we had a couple of parties each year, such a Christmas get together. We rent a place out, and we got everyone to bring their spouses and all that stuff. So there's a lot of good camaraderie in the company. In fact, they still talk about it today. I'm still in touch with a lot of them, which is fantastic, really. And yeah, it was those were good days. But it's important to keep the morale in the company going, especially what we did, because the software we developed was important to businesses around the world for communication. So yeah, it worked out in the end. Looking back, I thought, yeah, I can pat myself on the back, sort of, and so can everyone in the company. And yeah, we did good. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And one of my favorite quotes of entrepreneurship is by Peter Drucker, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. When you were back in '98 and you created this software to help the world, help companies, how were you playing the role of a visionary if you took yourself back to that moment? Was that the goal, to be visionary and perhaps pioneering a new way?
We just saw basically it was myself. I was on site in Wisconsin, and we had one of the developers come down from Canada. And we were talking about this, and we looked at the company we worked for at the time, and it was a bit messy, but it was a challenging, and and there was an element of that product that we were working on. We thought, information. We could do a bit better than this if we tried. Um, our existing company couldn't. They were into too much other stuff of importance, but we saw an opportunity where we could expand on this and develop something. We saw an opportunity, and we probably talked about it for a year or so, and then we decided, it's worth giving it a go, and we were at the time where we were thinking our age. Well, if we don't do it now, we never will, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And what's the worst that can happen if it just falls apart? Well, we just get another job. So it was all right. So we just threw
Yeah.
caution to the wind. That was it. And yeah, but it was difficult. The challenges along the way. Yeah, we stayed in the crappiest of hotels for a while, and it was it was a money issue, but we had to. It's all that. But eventually, yeah, we kept our heads screwed on, and we kept the good relationships going with our business partners, and it worked out in the end. So it's all right.
Right. So in '98 you were right around 42, right?
So what year did you say?
In '98 you were right around 42.
Yes. I had
Yeah.
to think about that for a minute. Yeah,
Yeah.
around 42. Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So 42. Basically, you obviously you were in technology your whole life prior to it, like you were saying. That was more specifically telecom was truly your niche, and what I suppose you were professionally astute. But that being said, what you're 42, basically, with again all this experience behind you. When you're thinking of how you identify that gap in the market, was it can you tell me more about, was it an aha moment, was it a, you said it was kind of like a year of digesting what that opportunity can be and trying to make it better, but what was the moment you said, here, that's what we're going to solve, that's what we're going to better in our lifetime?
It's a good question. Basically, it wasn't just us. There were other products in the market out there that were doing sort of what we thought, but we were leveraging newer technology. And over time, it was initially Windows and then doing a web-based product. So over time, it matured, but we kept up with technology and the development skills to do it. We made sure we had the right people on board. So, but it wasn't really this type of uh, product out there. It wasn't really classed as saying, well, this is really important. But we felt it was. And so we were every day in work, you learn something new, and that's
Hmm.
even what I do today is travel. I like to learn something new every day, and I do when I'm traveling. I learn about how the rest of the world lives. But you know what? It was something we saw an opportunity with, and we just developed it. We couldn't foresee what would ultimately happen, that the technology would change that, but we leveraged the existing and the future technology as we went along, and that we were focused on that. So
Yeah. Before 43, or were you always interested in travel, because that's a huge part of who you are as a person? When did that emerge?
well, basically, growing up in England, my parents were World War II veterans, and growing up in Coventry, which was a subject of the what called famous. Coventry was the most bombed city in Britain, the Coventry Blitz, and they were survivors of that. They were the veterans, but they made a point in traveling. And myself and my sister, they took us to different places, even a little bit overseas into Europe. So they gave me the travel bug.
Hmm.
But what gave me the travel bug more than anything, when I was 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, yeah, my mother came up to me and just said, "Hey, Malcolm, your dad and I are going away for 3 weeks to Asia. Will you be able to take care of the house and the cat?" And this is a true story, actually. I said, "Well, okay, sounds good." So when they got back, the house was still standing, the cat was still alive, and they told me about their trip to far off distant lands, which in the where I was born and raised wasn't in people's brain cells at the time, because growing up we used to go to Spain or in the Mediterranean where the hot weather was, as opposed to tolerating the English weather, which just rained all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they piqued my interest with that. And then I turned to my buddies and said, "Let's go to Asia, not Spain." He said, "Nah, it's too far away. Why would you want to go all the way over there?" Blah, blah, blah. So I went by myself. And that really piqued my interest. And that was in 1980 when I went there by myself. And it was an eye-opening experience. So I went to Singapore, Thailand, and Singapore, Thailand, and Hong Kong. And it opened my eyes. So this is fantastic. And I've been back to Asia virtually every year for the last 15 years. And so I keep going back there. So, that's really basically how I came into this. No, it was a travel bug I caught at a young age. I even wrote about it in one of my books, The Travel Addict Disease, which is basically could be classed as that, but it's a good disease to have. Anyway, the story continues, and I travel. But yeah, I've had this travel bug ever since I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's so interesting. So that first urge of going to Asia, right? You decide to go basically alone because your friend didn't want to go with you. What was the underlying reason for a trip to Asia? Was it to discover something new, curiosity? What do you think was the main impulse?
All of the above. Basically, at the time, I had a full-time job
Mm-hmm.
in telecommunications, but in the evening, I was a disc jockey a few days a week. And myself and another guy, we had a discotheque, and so that's another story. But so I was earning a bit of money, and so I could afford to do this. But yes, I was curious about what my parents told me, and I thought I'll give it a go. What could possibly go wrong? But I made sure, my first stop over there was Hong Kong. But on the TV at the time was a program called the Hong Kong Beat, which made Hong Kong look like a bit of a dubious place. And that intrigued me. Not that I was going there deliberately to get into trouble, but I went there, stayed at a decent hotel, and I was surprised it was so very British there, actually, because it was British, where they were leasing it from the Chinese.
Yes.
But then I went back 2 years ago there. No, earlier on this year I was there actually again, just to see the old place again. It's still full of Brits, but great place, probably the most vibrant place on the planet. But anyway, so it was a learning experience, and I hopped over to Singapore, then Thailand. At my age when I first went there, I was in, I guess, my 30s. So yeah, I got into trouble, but that's all right. Anyway, but there's learning mistakes. That's just birth by fire. That's what it is.
Sure. And when you're talking about Birth by Fire, when you're thinking about the intersection of travel and personal growth, how important that was in informing who you are and what you not only believe in, but perhaps the project you were taking during your lifetime.
You said how important was it? It probably was very important because the interest stayed with me. And even today, the more I travel, the more I want to do it. I'm one of these guys that has a bucket list that's growing, not going the opposite direction. I probably need counselling. But anyway, it's important because I'm able to do lectures on cultures, foreign cultures, because I'm familiar with them. But I tell you why it became an important deal for me, especially from business perspective. If I was going to a foreign country, now I speak English, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't speak French. I don't speak Spanish.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I tell people I speak 5 languages actually: English, American, Canadian, Australian, and New Zealand. But anyway, that's it's just dialects and accents. But anyway, I only speak really the English language, but find that most people overseas, places I went to, got by. They speak English, and we got by. But what I would do if I was going on business meetings, let's say it was Brazil, you know, I learned a little bit about the culture down there before I went. I learned a bit about the history and the culture and their business culture. So when I met up with these people, and everyone I met were decent, and we sat down and I asked them a little bit about the history and the culture, the business culture, and the big soccer fans down there as well. So we had a lot in common. And what it does, it makes people like that feel comfortable with you as me, as a visitor to their nation. Or it gave they gave me some respect. The fact is, I've done my homework to find out a little bit about their country, their nation, because they're proud of their country. Like we in America think this is the best place to live in the world, but people in every other country feel the same way about their country as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a good thing to do for people doing business overseas. And I was encourage everyone to think about that if they got a product that could be value to somewhere else, to go over there, learn a bit about the company, learn a bit about their culture, and you can hit the ground running. And that's basically what happened.
Yeah, no, you're definitely an immensely curious gentleman, which is quite interesting. When you're thinking about the interconnectivity between curiosity as in traveling, but also curiosity as in a business setting, like you said, getting more knowledgeable on their values, their culture, their history, both company and just geographic wise, is let me ask you this way: when you're thinking about the novelty of curiosity and how it shaped who you are, is that something that you recommend basically people to be more engaged towards this understanding that perhaps they don't know anything compared to the endless knowledge of the human of basically our world, and curiosity perhaps can propose them to not only become better people, but therefore better serve the world. Just how vital is curiosity in everything you are doing?
With, if I understand correctly, basically, wherever I went to, and people have different ways of entertaining. So I didn't go and meet them and say I got to go back to the hotel now. See you tomorrow. No, because it's socializing is a big thing, you know, and even when I went to remember go to Mexico and the guys there were big party guys. I said, Malcolm, you're coming out with us tonight. We'll take you to a few good places. And I'm the foreigner, right? Don't speak much of the language. I stand out like a sore thumb. And yeah, I can say that for Brazil as well. The guy said to me, the managing director of the company, he said, Malcolm, if you go out, don't go out at night. I said, why? He said, because you're a gringo. I said, gringo? Yeah. And he said, you stand out. All right. But I didn't listen much, but I still went out anyway. But they part of conducting business as foreigners, you need to socialize with them so you become their friend almost, and you instill that element of trust. It's very important for international business. It is with any business, to be honest with you. You've got to have that trust, especially if a company in a foreign land is trying to do sort of business with you. So they could have just said, here's a guy coming from the United States, or is he a Brit? Why would I trust him? But the fact is, in Asia, I went to live over there for a while, and that was a good thing to do anyway. But over time, just building this element of trust and be there when they need you from a support perspective, and it turned out in the end, yeah. But
Yeah. No, we buy from people we like, know, and trust, right?
yeah,
That's just the bottom line. When you're thinking about, because there's such incredible cultural insights inside of your how many countries? Is it 191 countries you visited?
no, if you include depends if you mean sovereign states or if you include autonomous countries
Right. Let's include
or
everything.
territories or municipalities. What that means is there are all different levels of governance within that. So, well, about 118.
118. That was the number. Great. And when you're thinking, because very few people, as a not only the privilege, I'm sure you feel privileged, but also the resources to be able to accomplish such a feat. When you're thinking about what the world can teach us about basically the just the connection and the overlying connections from a culture to another one, from people that have very different environment, but yet try to cultivate the same thing and perhaps maybe even friend. How do you explain that?
Well, it's all part of education to me. And I try to, when I go to places, some people say, either are you bonkers, or some person said once, I told them where I was going. When I went to first time I went to country Bhutan, they said, "What's that?" I said, "It's a country." You know, oh, okay, but it's educational because the reason I do this, like not real reason, but I do try and mingle with the locals if I'm going on an adventure trip somewhere. And last time, earlier on in the year, I was over in the very northern tip of Thailand in a city called Chiang Rai. I decided to venture up into the mountains there and meet the hill tribe people. These are the ladies with the long necks. They wear these chains around their necks. You might have seen pictures of them.
Interesting.
So I spent some time up there learning a bit about how they live and why they live like that. I even got a school there for kids. And there's different tribes. And, it's surprising why they live there. They live there because they want to. And it's where their ancestors have been for centuries. It's like when I trekked the Himalayas a few years ago, I met the hill people and the mountain people in these mountain villages. Even the children wore school uniforms to go to school in. They've got the discipline and they've got the personality. Yeah, they spoke enough English to get by, but that is where they want to live. That's where their ancestors lived. And I understand why, having been there, even in the Mongolian wilderness, spending a day or so with the nomads, understanding why they live like they do. And it gives you a newfound respect for them. And it really is fascinating to see their way of life and the way they just tick along. They're happy. And yeah, they do know about the rest of the world. Yeah, they do. And but this is what they want to do.
Right. So for I think it's so insightful, so interesting because like you said, right, their ancestors were always there. There's this kind of like bias of, hey, we always live this way. Let's continue this living legacy. For you, you're talking about obviously quite mysterious places that you've been basically around the world to. Was that always a core driver of traveling for you to discover new things and understand the world better?
Yeah, it still is today. Absolutely. Now, I say, even though I mentioned I've been to all these countries, I have to thank some cruise ships there as well because um, if I say the countries I've spent less than 24 hours, I don't count. My country count goes to about 105. But anyway, that's another thing. So the cruise ships stop at port, and I talk about that as well. But so that's that. But I've lost track of what I was going to say there, Sam. What was the question you asked me to answer there?
No, and I was just wondering, when you think about your own reason of traveling, was understanding the world better always a core driver of traveling for you?
Yeah, the adventurous spirit and a better understanding of how the rest of the world lives and works. And it's when the worlds are full of conflict like it is today, and people are just sort of saying, they've just been hammered by bombs. Doesn't matter where it is. There's always a trouble in a part of the world at some point of their history. Look what's going on in Amsterdam now, probably one of the most peaceful cities on the planet, and that's been going through problems right now. But next week, just a week and a half, I'm off doing some lecturing work in the Caribbean.
Hmm.
And you think, well, nothing wrong there, but that's got a history of colonialism and slavery and trouble. You wouldn't think, but it has. It's the same all over the world in their history. But over time, we learn to deal with that. We don't want to go back to that time. But yeah, it's the learning of that. So I can speak sensibly about it. So if someone says something negative about a country, why would you want to go there? It's a third world country, blah, 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 blah. I said, where's the term third world come from? What? No, it was a guy, a Frenchman called Alfred Savy. He created that word. But that's another story. But anyway, it's all about, learning because I find it fascinating, and I get a kick out of it saying, it's wonderful how those people live. Or I say, I don't understand why they do it, but I respect that because that's what they want to do and they're happy. There's no crime there, typically, and, that's fine. They live their life like they want to.
Yeah. From that cycle of observation, you just say, right, all tribe and all basically society and civilization go through this phase of slavery and awful things that occur and so on. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's such a core element of human existence?
Yeah. I don't know. It just happens. I mean, the slavery thing, especially in the Caribbean, like the French brought in 1.4 million slaves, the British brought in just over 3 million slaves into the Caribbean to man the sugar plantations. And eventually in history, the Brits decided, we're just going to, all the slaves are free. And that was it. In 1833, they decided that was it. And why? A lot changed since. But it's not the same the world over. It's just that phase going through. Then sometimes it depends who's in charge of a country, maybe. But the fact is, we're all human beings at the end of the day. And one thing that is hurtful, we're all human beings, and the amount of innocent people that have passed away, because of it could be colonization of a country, land grabs and all that. But killing people for the sake of a piece of land, it just makes no sense to me. And here's another thing. In the end of 2021, I was in Ukraine, right? And the local newspaper found out. They put me on the front page of the newspaper there. Listen to what this guy said about being in Kiev in the Ukraine. So anyway, I don't know about it. Yeah, the people are pleasant. Fantastic architecture in Kiev in the Ukraine. Fantastic, beautiful city. It doesn't kind of justify being bombed and innocent people being killed for what differences of opinion about something. Let people live the way they want to live. Peace has been made before. Even the Caribbean, there were all these peace accords, to the Treaty of Paris, the Madrid Treaty, and the list goes on, to which periodically quelled disturbances over time and stopped the killing. And we should just do it. Innocently killing innocent people is just unbelievable. It is. And the hurt of family members. So this is all part of me going elsewhere, seeing how people live. There's nothing wrong with it. These people are great people everywhere I've gone. And I couldn't, people think I'm going to a place, that's a bad place, isn't it? I said, no, it's not. I met the people. I met the locals. I know what they're like. Trust me. And they were all human beings. And it gives me a better respect for the rest of the world. And
No, absolutely. And one of my favorite travelers is a gentleman called Drew Binsky, and just recently been finishing up his world tour. And he said, you want to understand something very clearly. The government and the people are two different things, in meaning that perhaps the government might be able to exert some type of power and dominance and ideology in which are hatred, intolerance, and so on. But from his experience, and I'd love to hear your experience as well, the world is quite beautiful, isn't it? The world is quite tolerant and lovely.
yeah, there's some beautiful places around the planet, wonderful places. And I was just looking at I try and stay away from the news, but I was looking at the videos of different places. I always do, actually, even places, northern part of Pakistan, in different parts of Africa. And even just 2 years ago, I went to the country of Namibia, and people said, Namibia, tell me where that is. I said, it's Africa. Oh, where? I said, it's that. Let me tell you where it's at. Why on earth would you want to go there? Because it's the world's oldest desert. And magnificent beauty down there that you've never seen before in your life. You don't expect it. So I bring these photographs back, video clips, and I just felt at peace when I was down there. The people were wonderful. That's the way they live, but a beautiful place on the planet. And there's so many of these types of places of beauty that people should go to see. And what a great planet we live on. Place of beauty. They're all over.
Yeah. No, in that's so beautiful. Let me own in on the meaning part. You just said you were talking with some of your friends or whatever colleagues, and they were asking you, "Hey, why would you even want to go there in the first place?" For you as an individual, why is traveling so meaningful?
Because once you get the book, you want to do want more of it. It's meaning because it's educational, right? And
Hmm.
it provides people with a newfound respect for people in a foreign land. That's pretty much it. And there are, like a lot of European countries, most people have a passport. It's easy, but the number of percentage of people with active passports in the United States is quite low. It's one of the lowest. Yeah, it was at one time 37%. It's gone up a bit now because of COVID. But, people don't feel the need to do it. There's lots of places in the States to go to, so I sort of forget it. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, but get out of town more, see how people conduct their lives elsewhere. If you don't, if you don't see it, you've got no place to criticize them or foreign land. Or don't think, you know, I got a person that said to me, when I went back to Singapore a couple of years ago, I was passing through a couple of days, but a person said to me, why do you keep going to these third world countries? Did you know that Singapore is one of the most upper class, sophisticated places on the planet, the world's best healthcare, more millionaires per capita than any other place, zero crime, spotlessly clean? Now, tell me why is that you think that's third world? And this is the thing that
Yeah.
which people don't understand. They say these things, but no, it's not necessarily true. Yeah, and well, that's because they sincerely believe it. I don't know. So anyway, I keep doing that, and not to correct people, but it's for my own well-being and for my own appreciation of our beautiful planet. So ongoing quest.
Yeah, sure. What's your favorite place you ever visited?
Depends what you in what respect. I've visited. I love the continent of Asia. Outside of Britain and America, discount those for a couple of minutes. But I'm a great fan of Thailand because it's
Mhm.
culturally rich. People are friendly. You know, as far as land, beautiful land. I don't know. I've been to so many. I mentioned Namibia, but that place applies to Nepal as well,
Mhm.
Mongolia, and places in Europe. Just beautiful places. Friendliest people, they're all over. There's friendly people all over, really. So it, every little place I go to, it means something. I remember it, and even places in the Caribbean are cool. I go to the Turks and Caicos Islands once every year, twice a year, and I love that. Love it down there. So anyway, that's it. Each country has their own sort of personality, I would say, and
Sure.
character and history, of course. When I've got a transatlantic cruise to go on next April, and on my way back there, I'm going to see. I've got relatives in England. I'm going via Iceland on the way back, spend a few days, and Iceland now the safest place in the world. So
Oh, really?
yeah. I study world indexes as well, and it's just I lecture on that period. That's a study of who does best, who does what the best in the world,
Hmm.
and there's a number of factors. But yeah, Iceland is the safest country in the world today, and yeah. So anyway, that's not the reason I'm going there. It's a cool place to go. So it's on the way back to the States. So yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, that's it. And I think if my fellow Americans, listen to this and hope they get something out of it, said, yeah, we'll probably need to spend a bit more, even if it's just going down to Mexico or Costa Rica. There's a lot of Americans actually leaving the States to go and live for a year or two outside the country, whether it's Costa Rica, Panama, or over across the pond into Portugal and Spain. Yeah. So they do it. Yeah. So,
Sure. Well, we definitely know that curiosity is a core driver of tolerance, and we definitely know how important tolerance is in this world. And we see that when we don't have tolerance, harmful things actually occur. So that's definitely a
yeah.
something to keep in mind when you're when you're thinking of one of my favorite quote of all time is by Gandhi, which is a nation, culture resides in the hearts and the soul of its people. Do you find that to be true through your exploration?
Yeah, it's funny because I just looked at the news today, the BBC, and it was in New Zealand, and the government of is taken after the British government Parliament buildings, and there was an uproar in the Parliament buildings there because some of the locals in there objected to the decision made by the government, and they did the Maori war dance in the government building, the haka. And if you know what that is, look at the rugby team, New Zealand All Black rugby team do the haka. It's a Maori war dance, and these people started doing this in the government buildings. It's on YouTube now. I thought this is funny as hell, and because I mean it's embedded in what was then into people today. So from the Maori culture into how they conduct their lives today, it's still there. So it's all part of it. And actually, even in the Caribbean today, and I'll be there next week. All the countries in the Caribbean, well, or most of them, have their own festivals 2 or 3 times a year, but most of them are built on African culture, right?
Interesting.
And there's junkanoo, there's all kinds of stuff that go on. It's all because when they were brought over as slaves, all that culture came with them. Chants, songs, dances, it all came with them. It's still heavily embedded into the Caribbean culture. So it's there. It's here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's here to stay. That's so interesting, so interesting. So you sold Prairie Fired, basically your software company back in 2013. You mentioned large corporation. Is that under NDA still, or can you spoil the name of the corporation?
So run that by me again, Sam. I didn't quite get that. If what?
Sure. So you sold basically Prairie Fired, your software company, back in 2013
Yeah.
to what you say is a large corporation. Is that under NDA, or can you share the name of the company that bought you guys out?
I can't really talk about that because it's.
That's fine.
But
Sure.
anyway, no, it is. We knew. But I used to work for the company that bought us out anyway. But generally speaking, it was just a ongoing business relationship. We had. It's like a lot. We just have technology they desired, and so it went through well, and that was it. Both
Sure.
party benefited from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then basically from that, basically in 2013, where you perhaps was able to liquidate your share through this large corporation, you started as a kind of like a extend your career as an international business consultant, author of many books, public speaker, which I want to get into. When you're thinking of public speaking, were you doing public speaking before 2013, or that was pretty much where
Yeah,
everything kind of like
it
accelerated?
was. I was doing public speaking industry trade shows as well,
Sure.
sales events, and that happened obviously in America. But I did presentations in Europe, Asia, and Africa, where I was just invited as a business partner, but also invited to speak at a trade show to advertise or talk about this new technology, which would help our partner. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So I used to talk in trade shows. Plus the fact when I was a kid, not really a kid, but I was a DJ, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. But yeah, so in fact, after I retired early, I got a call one day, and gentleman on the phone said, "Hey, Malcolm, not a bit about your history. I think probably LinkedIn, whatever it was, but they said, you ever done any public speaking on cruise ships?" And I said, "I've never been on a cruise ship," which I hadn't.
Yeah, how old are you then?
And they said, "Well, can you talk about something on a cruise ship?" I said, "Yeah, I can find something." And I did, and I got invited to talk on a cruise ship that sailed around the Caribbean. And then I thought, well, I had a more respect with, I understand why people go on cruise ships a bit more, especially the elderly people. And, I get it. So I had more opportunities there. The more I did it, the more I sort of enjoyed it, because I find it relaxing, to be honest with you. And
Mm-hmm.
I could stand in front of a bunch of people for 45 minutes and talk about a particular place, history, geography, and the culture, and speak to people, mix with them, and it's good, useful. Just pass on that information, and a lot of it is stuff they wouldn't know. And I have some other programs, not as of history, but about other weird subjects as well, which piques people's interest. I got talk on scuba diving. I'm a certified scuba diver, and all that goes off on another tangent, or how to become bilingual, like me.
Mm-hmm. No.
Anyway, that's a strange subject. So, but it's a mixture of stuff, and so it's that those opportunities are there while I want them,
Yes,
basically.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
what do you find meaningful about public speaking? You mentioned the education pieces, but what else is perhaps driving you towards such obviously events and I suppose um, let me ask you this way: when you're thinking about the overlap of your curiosity with travel and the meaning you find with traveling, does that also perhaps apply to speaking and engaging in thoughtful conversation?
yeah, yeah. I think it is because it came about. Back to my working days, even when I went to a place, and my partners would say to us, some of the employees would say, "Matt, why are you going down there? Why? Isn't that just like a waste of time?" I said, "No, it's not. I'll tell you why." And especially when I said to my partners, I just said, "Look, I think I'm going to live in Singapore for 2 years to spread the business out there." What? And yeah, and it worked out. We landed up translating our product into 2 versions of Chinese, and and it worked. And we got that area, APAC, Asia Pacific, and so on, a couple of trips to Australia. But there you can't, because of the time zone, you can't do business remotely and be successful. So that was it. So basically, it all worked out well. So, but that's where my head's at. And to be speaking about it passes that information on. So people who listen to a talk of mine will obviously, like come up with questions afterwards, but they go away with the thoughts of, I didn't know that. Is that possibly true? I need to get out more. And these are the feelings that people have. And especially when you explain the beauty of a place, and it surprises the hell out of people. So, God, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I need to do that. So it helps people think about traveling more themselves and really have a better appreciation about the human race and how people live, conduct their lives around the world. And that's
Yeah,
what it's all
well, you're
about.
definitely a storyteller, so I can see you on stage very easily. When you're thinking about like capturing an audience and with specifically with adventure and so on, what's how is it? How elaborate is it to create a story out of an adventure for you? You have so many of them. How do you pick and choose? How do you perhaps elaborate your process on stage?
It depends. It depends on what I'm
Hmm.
talking about, really. Even just recently, I've got a talk coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'll talk about the island of St. Lucia. Off the top of my St. Lucia, and it's a beautiful Caribbean island, but it also happens to be the only nation ever named after a woman, a female,
Right.
right? A human female. Ireland is named after a mythical goddess, but no, St. Lucia is named after a real female. But people think go to Caribbean and lay on the beach all day, la la la. No, last time I went there, stay a few days, I stayed in the rainforest. And people don't think about rainforest. Yeah, I stayed in a place in the rainforest. I hiked around there and overlooked the Gros Piton. Think about that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you don't know. And last time I was in Asia, I went to the world's most biodiverse marine area in the world, and it's difficult to get to. It's called Raja Ampat. It's in Indonesia, and people say, "Why?" Why would you go through that difficult to get there? I said, there's stuff in the water there you'd never even believe your eyes, right? It's so bio. There's creatures down there. So I get close up and personal with them. I film them, right? There's so much beauty in the world and just weird creatures and strange, beautiful creatures. But this is stuff is worth seeing to me. That's why I put the effort in to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that's a little story I could tell. But I do when I talk, I always say to people, I do digress a little.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, when I talk about stuff, but there's no harm in that. And you've got to have a story to tell. I think you can't preach history, geography, and facts. People aren't really interested. Well, the island is 341 square miles, has 200,000 people living on it. Blah, blah, blah. They want to know something more intense than that, an experience, right? So you have to throw in some facts and actually some
Yeah.
fun
No,
stuff.
absolutely. And you're such a dedicated gentleman. Obviously, getting well, first of all, you're quite a seasoned professional, but I think the fact that you still have this urge of understanding the world better and doing more and learning more. I suppose when you subscribe to a mentality of being a lifelong learner and this understanding that you'll never get to a point where you know enough, right? I think that's definitely how you strike me, at least. How do you keep find things that not only emerge you into contemplation, into this state of, hey, I want to learn more about that, when you seem to have such a wide knowledge of basically travel and what it is to be a man of the world, quote unquote here. um, how do you keep the energy and perhaps the resources to do so even as you're getting older?
There's a thought that enters my brain cells, and it's called having no regrets in life, right? I don't want to be lying on my deathbed and thinking, I should have done that. I'm not happy. No, I don't. Yeah, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I just want to do as much as I can as long as I'm physically able to do it. You know, my age, and I was in 2023. I was on a cruise in Asia. That I was lecturing on a cruise which went from Hong Kong down the coastline of Vietnam into Thailand. So I had a lot to talk about the Asian culture. But when I got off the ship when it docked in Singapore, I took a flight to the country of Bhutan. I went there 9 years prior and climbed up to Tiger's Nest Monastery. That's unbelievable. It's one of the most sacred places on the planet, and it's about 10,000 feet up. So you go. So I thought, I want to go back there because this is a land of beauty and peacefulness. It's, so I decided to do the climb again. And my tour guide said, well, he told me afterwards, I didn't think you were going to make it. I said, well, not many people your age do it. But I was determined to see if I could get to the monastery again, especially the last half mile is pretty grueling. But I made it. I got in shape before I did it. And I got up to the Tiger's Nest Monastery. So Google that if anyone wants to know what the hell's Teasdale talking about. Just Google Tiger's Nest Monastery, Bhutan. And they'll see it's a monastery built on the rock face, it's on a cliff face, but you can actually go there. It's a sort of very spiritual place. But anyway, I did that for the second time. So I patted myself on that. Great. Looks like I'm not going to keel over and die anytime soon if I can make this. That's just me. I get something stuck in my brain cells. No, most people don't even know where it is or wouldn't think about doing it. But the people who do it once in their life, not twice. But anyway, that's me.
Yeah. When you're thinking about, obviously, like I said, yes, I do know your age. I'm just calculating very simply with some dates that I was able to found. But when tell me more about the balance, or perhaps how do you harmonize taking care of yourself, being an author, very avid traveler. I don't know your basically your family setting, so perhaps you can lead me with this as well. But how do you find harmony? What's the trick?
I've learned to. plan way in advance because my theory is I've always got to have something nice to look forward to, right? So I've got a lot, 2025 busy for me, and I have to have something to look forward to. It makes me feel good because since I've just moved up to North Carolina from Florida, I'm still unpacking darn boxes here, and I hate doing that, right? And I'm thinking, why did we bring all this stuff up here when we're not even going to use? So we're going to donate a lot of it. But yeah, I just unpacking boxes, but I want to get rid of that mindset, having something good to look forward to. And that keeps me going. Actually, I'm into 2026 now of speaking gigs, but that's all right. Some will come, some will go, some I have to back out of. But yeah, I'll be over to Europe at least twice next year, so that's all right. Going up in the fjords of Norway, which is another beautiful spot on the planet, by the way. If you haven't been up there, like go up north into the fjords towards the Arctic Circle. The land or the views of the landscape there is absolutely spectacular. So I'll be back up there.
Sure.
That's to keeping it going, man.
Yeah, yeah. You have to, right? You have to. When you're thinking about the kind of like the evolution of travel in the digital worlds, I was able to go to this incredible virtual experience place where you're basically in the middle of Kiop. It's just a beautiful and lovely presentations, and you can actually explore and just try to pretty much contemplate the idea in which you are actually in Kiop. It's that good. Obviously, you have also a technology background. So when you're thinking about the leap forward that we're making with all this technology, do you think will make traveling more accessible to the masses? And what do you think the repercussion of that will be on the travel industry?
Difficult to say. I do a podcast called Two Brits in America. My partner on that, he's an expert at artificial intelligence, and he's basically saying that's his function in life. He had his own business there, but he said to me, you've got to embrace it like when we were growing up. We had to embrace technology because if you don't, you'll be the loser. And artificial intelligence is not going to go away. It's going to replace jobs. But if you learn about it and respect it, then you'll be just fine. So it's like people have to, learn and respect it. As far as travel, I don't know how it will affect that. They'll probably because planes will be getting better, faster, blah, blah. As far as booking trips, who the hell knows? Countries will fall out with each other. Then the problem of getting from one country to another. I'm trying not to worry about the negatives of it, right? If it happens, it happens. I don't want to bug my mind with it. God, if I can't go there, I'm going to be really upset. This is not fair. I'm going to have to call up the embassy. No, I'm not going to do that. I can't. But I just focus on what I can do today. But obviously, embrace technology and all that. So, which is what we had to do when we had the business. We had to move forward. And
Sure, but you're quite positive. You don't think that there's I know that there is some question about the not only the integrity of it but the authenticity of basically these ways of travels. And to me, just to give you kind of like where I am leading with this as a young gentleman, very young gentleman, is I see this as such a great opportunity, right? This understanding in which you can at a very young age go to a virtual experience, try to better understand. Just the curiosity behind it, I think, is not only novel but very, very positive for the world. And perhaps why not think that it will flourish a better understanding and therefore a better tolerance to those around us, which I think ultimately is can be a great desirable outcome. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit of a utopian, but I don't think it's well. Yes, it is a little bit dreamy, but I think it's definitely possible. We've been seeing it more and more. I think that the world never been this open, education wise and information wise. There's obviously some downfall and hardship with that as well, but I think the positive far outweighs the negative.
Yeah, and if countries fall out, don't really put that on. I just remember the first time I went to
Hmm.
Argentina, and I was on the plane going down there, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, it just came to me. I didn't have time to think much. I just got on the plane and went somewhere. And I was thinking, wait a minute, I'm a Brit, and there was a Falkland War not long ago. If you remember that, the British versus the Argentinians. I wonder if I can. Then I thought, then it was Diego Maradona's hand of God goal. Do you
Yes,
remember
yes,
that?
I'm a big soccer fan.
Yeah, I know, knocked England out of the World Cup. I said, anyway, I got to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and the guys were there to meet me at the airport. And I thought, Teasdale, don't bring up the Falklands War. And what if they do? And we got along famously. Those troubled times never came up. In fact, they took me to a local soccer game when I was down in Buenos Aires. It was a bit scary, but anyway, that's just River Plate and Boca Juniors there. But anyway, I survived that. But they're just great people, and so those bad time in history never quite came up because we have to accept it, move on,
Yes, yes, that seems to be your position on a lot of things. Actually, try to control what you can control, but what you can control, accept it and embrace it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't go because the people I'm meeting weren't responsible for it. They're just the innocent bystander, the citizens. But when I was there was the economic collapse in Buenos Aires right after I left, so they were protesting in the street. But there's nothing to do with me. Just get on, try and do the business. If that's what it is, or you go there to see the sites, mix with the locals, learn a bit about it. But you can't do the finger pointing. No, absolutely not. No. So you wouldn't be going there in the first place. You should be if you got that attitude. I'm going to Argentina, but I can't stand the people. No, of course not. It's basically it. Yeah. So we had a lot of stuff in common. It was a fun time.
Sure. And to just to finish us off, I think that we begin this conversation actually with legacy. So I think just wrapping the tie around this conversation will be very insightful. With everything you're doing, and education seems to be such a vital core of what you're doing with speaking, writing, storytelling, and so on. What is your desire of what you want to leave behind as kind of like to pave the way perhaps for inspiring the next generation?
For the next generation, well, I'm trying to pass that information on to my son, so he'll go up and he is sinking in a bit now. But what I would just like people to understand better is the fact is I mentioned this before, we're all human beings. We need to have more respect for each other and learn how each other lives. The person on the other side of the world is your friend, not an enemy, So get along with everybody. Most people do, but there's a lot of people that don't. They just won't go to a place because I don't like the country. I'm not going to that place. But no, if we all learn to have a bit more respect for the people in the rest of the world, then we all get along famously. And the world today is even more so with technology. Is we're doing a podcast. The podcast reaches people on the other side of the planet, right? So we're talking. I know you're in Canada. I'm down here in the States, but you've had people from different countries in the world talking to you, as I have, and it's a great thing, And even that teaches you a little bit about their way of life. So I think that's what we all need to do: get a bit educated about each other and stop killing each other. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Malcolm Teasdale, was an absolute pleasure to have this lovely conversation with you. You just truly strike me as a curious, tolerant, and truly admire your position on all the topics that we discussed today. Anything else that you'd like to share with our audience? Just closing statements, please.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Sam. And if you want to find out more about my escapades, whether they're right or wrong, there's some mistakes. Yeah. So you can check out malcolmteasdale.com. And I've got about 5 books, some audible books as well. You can read about my escapades around the world and some audible books as well, even about my time in the Himalayan mountains, the Himalayan nations as well. And that was eye-opening experience. But yeah, there's a lot out there. Or tune into the podcast, The Travel Addict and the Two Brits in America. For the latter for a light-hearted sense of humor. But yeah, that's it. Just Google me. I'm out there. Yeah.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.